You know, in most companies, the most valuable assets, they literally walk out the door every single evening. We're talking about your most experienced, most knowledgeable people. But here's the paradox, right? What if that incredible, irreplaceable value is also your single greatest risk? Let's dig into that.
Every office has one. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The Oracle. The person who just knows everything. In the short term, they are absolute heroes. They fix that ancient database, they remember the password nobody wrote down, they save the day all the time. But here's the catch. Relying on a hero means you don't have a system. You just have a dependency.
And that dependency, it actually has a name in the engineering world, a single point of failure, or SPOF. It's any one part of a system that's so critical that if it disappears, the whole operation just grinds to a halt. And in business, that fragile component, well, it's very often a person's unwritten knowledge, all locked up in their head.
This leads to a kind of grim but super important thought experiment that engineers use all the time. What is your bus factor? How many people on your team would need to get hit by a bus or, just win the lottery and vanish to a beach somewhere before a core part of your company completely stalls out? For way too many businesses, the answer is a terrifyingly low 1.
So how does this even happen? Why are we so vulnerable? Well, it all comes down to what's called the knowledge iceberg. The real problem, the reason for all this risk, is the part you can't see. What we actively manage in a business is just a tiny visible tip. The vast majority of what actually keeps things running is hidden deep below the surface.
Okay, so let's break this down into 2 types of knowledge. First, you've got explicit knowledge. That's the what. It's your handbooks, your process documents, basically the easy to write down stuff. But then there's the massive hidden part of the iceberg, tacit knowledge. This is the how and the why. It's the intuition an expert develops, the clever workarounds they've figured out, the gut feelings they have that come from years and years of experience. And this is where it gets kind of crazy. Look at this split. Up to 90% of the truly useful knowledge in any company is tacit. It's unwritten. It exists only inside the heads of your employees. That means most businesses are basically flying blind, only managing about 10% of their actual intelligence.
And look, this isn't just some business jargon. It's a real thing in psychology called Polanyi's paradox. It's summed up perfectly by this quote: "We know more than we can tell." Think about riding a bike. You know how to do it, right? But could you write a manual that would let someone else just pick it up and ride perfectly without ever falling? Probably not. It's the same for your experts. They can't always explain how they do what they do because, to them, it's just common sense. They just know.
Okay, so we get the problem. We have this giant, invisible iceberg of knowledge. But what's the actual damage? What does it really cost you? Because ignoring that hidden 90% isn't just a theoretical risk. It has a very real and very, very high price tag. So what happens the day after your Oracle leaves? Well, it's total chaos. The rest of the team ends up spending up to 1/3 of their time just doing detective work, digging through old emails, trying to reverse engineer messy spreadsheets, desperately trying to piece together how that person actually did their job. All innovation stops, all momentum just dies. Now, if you want a worst-case scenario, listen to this. In 2012, a financial firm called Knight Capital lost $440 million in 45 minutes. Think about that. Nearly $500 million just gone in less time than it takes to have lunch. And it wasn't a sophisticated software bug, it was a knowledge failure. One single technician forgot to update one server because the deployment process lived in people's heads, not in a documented system. And it's not just the big disasters, right? The costs are constantly piling up in other ways. Processes get distorted as they're passed from person to person. People invent their own inefficient workarounds just to get by. And it can take a new hire 6, 7, even 9 months to get fully up to speed, all because they have to learn that invisible 90% through painful trial and error. Okay, that was the bad news. We've seen the high cost of all this chaos. So how do we fix it? The old way, creating static documents and wikis, just doesn't work. They quickly turn into knowledge cemeteries, where information goes to die, outdated and ignored. We need a totally new approach, one that builds a living, breathing brain for the organization. So what's the big shift here? It's moving from passive storage to active intelligence. Instead of a static document that starts getting old the second you publish it, you build what's called a living corpus. Think of it as a complete body of knowledge that's constantly being updated, that actually understands the meaning behind your questions, not just keywords, and acts as a true, reliable brain for the whole company. So how does this actually work? Well, modern AI engines don't just wait around for busy people to write things down. First, they map out your most critical processes, the real backbone of your operations. Then, they use conversational AI to basically interview your experts, asking all the right questions to pull out that hidden, tacit knowledge we've been talking about. Next, they take all that messy human insight and structure it into a clean, machine-readable blueprint. And the final step is crucial. They continuously validate that info, making sure it stays alive and accurate.
So what's the end game here? The real benefit is a huge cultural shift. You move from an ask culture, where everything stops because someone has to go bother a busy senior person, to a search culture. In a search culture, anyone can find the verified answer they need, instantly. This empowers everybody, it makes decisions happen way faster, and it frees up your experts to focus on the work that actually moves the needle.
So this new approach can totally transform your efficiency and your culture. That's great. But let's talk about the one thing every business owner really cares about: money, the bottom line. This isn't just about saving time. It's about fundamentally increasing what your company is actually worth.
Imagine you're trying to sell your company or get a big investment. The first thing those investors are looking for is risk. And if they see that your entire operation depends on the memory of a few key people, they will apply what's called a key person discount. They will literally lower their offer because your company's value isn't built into a repeatable system. It's tied to people who could walk out the door tomorrow.
But the reverse is also true. There's a documentation premium. And look at the difference here. It's night and day. A standard company with chaotic processes stuck in people's heads might get valued at, say, a 4 times multiple of its earnings. But an organization with a clear, documented system proves it's scalable and resilient. That company can command a 6 or even 7 times multiple. It's a massive difference.
I mean, just look at this visually. It's the exact same business with the exact same revenue and product. But one is worth almost double the other, simply because its knowledge has been turned from a fragile liability into a tangible, transferable asset. So when you really think about it, once you've documented your company's brain, you're not just selling a product or a service anymore. You are selling operational certainty. And in the world of business and investing, certainty is what people will pay a huge premium for.
Which leaves us with one final big question to think about for your own organization. Is your company's collective intelligence a permanent, scalable asset, or is it just a collection of memories waiting to walk out the door? The answer to that question will define your company's future.